So here we are in November. The season of remembrance has All Souls yesterday, Remembrance Sunday coming up. It's also, a little bit like the shops, that Christmas has to start earlier and earlier. In a sense, this is the start of Advent. This is the pre-echoes of Advent. All the mention of the kingdom and the king coming, looking out for power and majesty. It's a sort of pre-echo of that season we're going to go into right at the beginning of December. This topic could be enormous, and I could be delivering a series of one-hour lectures here. So I'm obviously going to have to pick and choose what I talk about. So today I'm going to concentrate on the music really written for the Western churches, Requiem masses, and those are principally intended to be sung as part of a service. So, for example, I'm therefore not going to refer to the Britain War Requiem, which I had intended to do, but I mean that is a lecture all on its own. But it's just too big for this. Nor am I going to refer, except maybe obliquely, to the music written to go with the Book of Common Prayer for the Church of England, which was in use for hundreds of years, really until the First World War, actually, when the change really happens, and then the liturgical changes, reforms at the end of the 20th century, when the Eucharist service becomes more central. So I'm not going to refer to those things, but that's enough of what I'm not going to do. Music is, like football, people tell me, a universal language. And that may seem an obvious thing to say. It's also not a universal language. So it is in the sense that we can all, as humans around the globe, and indeed some animals, we can form notes with our voices, for example, regardless of training, and we can modulate those notes. They can go up and they can go down, and you can create a song. You can remember a song. It might be something you remember from your childhood. You could sing it back. It might be the latest meme that's going around on Insta. You all into that sort of thing? Or it could be that new idea we have of the earworm, a tune which gets in your head and you can't get rid of it and goes around and around. But at the same time, from community to community, music is radically different. So if you're in a Muslim community, you would not expect to hear the same modulations and the same music as you would in the Christian community. You would not expect to hear the same music or even the same tones and intonations in a Russian Orthodox service as you would in a Roman Catholic service. So this is a unifying force for us, but also a divisive one. There is, however, one type of music which is common to all traditions. Anyone know what that might be? I loved this when I found out about this. It's blindingly obvious. It's the lullaby. All traditions sing lullabies. And regardless of where you are in the world, they're designed to lull you to sleep, to get you into a quiet place so that you can go to sleep. So by their very nature, they are not up and at 'em. They're designed to make you close your eyes, and therefore they're quite often rather sad. So I think of the medieval carol, As I Lay on Your List Night, when the Virgin is singing to the child. I also think about this. This is when it gets this out of technology, can't bear it. Hopefully, just be prepared for a surprise. Nobody is going to be expecting this. I think that's absolutely beautiful. It's horribly manipulative, I'm afraid, isn't it? I mean, if I am keeping a grip on myself now, I could be in tears at this point, because it's chitty chitty bang bang. This is where it's from, and it's a lullaby. It's in a minor key. It sounds sad. Okay, it's a lullaby. It's rocking you into a safe place, but it sounds sad, and it's absolutely beautiful. Now, the reason why I've just played you that is because, in a sense, the whole business of the Requiem Mass, its words and its music, is not sad. In a moment, we're going to listen to the plain song, Introit, the Requiem plain song, Introit. The plain song, Gregorian chant, is the oldest music that we have in the Western tradition, with its roots in the Jewish chanting. It is an oral tradition which is handed down from singer to singer, from teacher to singer, cantor to singer, choir to choir. It is probably more improvisatory, or at least it was, than we do it now. We're very sort of formulaic about how we sing it. If you go to the Orthodox churches, it is still very improvisatory. In fact, there is a sense that you shouldn't write this music down. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, about writing music down. It's called Gregorian chant because allegedly, and I believe this entirely, St. Gregory was visited by some angels and they dictated all the plainsong into his ear. What we do know Gregory did was undertake an enormous amount of reform and codification and organisation of these various and different melodies. So he is absolutely central to the tradition. But I think probably there was quite a lot of human help in creating these melodies. The melodies of the Western Church, Gregorian chant, are by their nature modest. Okay? They are not very high. They don't sit high in the voice. They don't sit very low in the voice. They're designed to be sung by anyone in this room. Okay? They sit sort of in the middle. So that would be baritone or mezzo-soprano sort of range. They are not very fast. They're quite slow moving, and they're very meditative, and they weave around. So in an enormous building like St. Paul's, when we sing plainsong here, it hangs in the acoustics, creates its own harmonies, and it's very ordinary. It's not special music, it's ordinary music. Let's listen to a bit of that now. So this is the Introit, the Requiem aeternam, the first thing you hear in the Requiem Mass. So does that make you cry? Doesn't make me cry. It makes me feel a different emotion. So I feel serene, I feel calm, I feel I'm being taken somewhere up here. Okay? I'm not standing here thinking, oh my gosh, I'm about to cry because Hushabye Mountain is singing. That's where the Requiem Mass starts. It starts with words of hope and light. And it's a Mass, of course. So if you're in the Catholic Church in this period, as everyone is, apart from the Orthodox, what you do in any given situation is to say Mass. It's a daily occurrence. It's the normal thing to do. It is every day. So it is at once every day and special. And in a sense, it is the everyday special nature of Gregorian chant that makes it so powerful. It is a normal daily conversation, but you're doing it in a very, very special context. So, saying the Mass in the face of death, what do? We have Mass. And it's not for nothing that Father Ted will, in the face of any difficulty, suggest that Mass is said, because it's sort of the answer to everything. It's where it is. It's your everyday special. It's what you do. It's like it is part of your prayer cycle. The plainsong is it absolutely holds sway for at least 400 years until people start to write more complicated music. And they can only write more complicated music when a fabulous man called Guido d'Arezzo comes along. In fact, there are various people before him who try and find ways of writing down music. Because until this time, as I said, it's all oral. Okay, so you could go to a monastery in Switzerland, and you could go to a monastery in Poland, very different style of singing. Same music, possibly, same sort of music, but very different style of singing. Guido comes along and he says, if I draw a line here on a piece of parchment and put a dot below it, then that can show someone it's a lower note. And if I put a dot above the line, it can show the people that it's a higher note. So he uses more lines. He goes up to 4, not 5. And eventually he finds a way of writing down music, this Gregorian chant. There's an enormous outcry from a lot of the priests about this, because they say you must not write this music down. It's too special. It's too holy. You know, the tradition in some tribes people of not having their photograph taken because it interferes with their soul. This is what they were saying about this. It's holy, it's sacred. It can't be defined on a piece of paper. That's why we have the phrase to learn things by heart. You know, we don't learn things by heart. We learn things by head. We use our memory. But we talk about singing by heart or learning things by heart because you sing with your heart because it's sacred and special. You know. So Guido does this. The reason why it catches on is that they're going off on crusades. church is going off on crusades, and the people say, well, if we take this new notation to Jerusalem, we can teach them how to do it the right way. This was the thing that swayed the church into agreeing to have it written down. So the Orthodox tradition is still not written down, most of its chants. It's still the oral thing. But what it means is people can write more and more complicated music. So my next track, which is the opening of the Victoria Requiem, you will hear the plain song Introit. You've just sung the opening bit, Requiem aeternam, and you will then hear music in harmony. And this is the big invention that we get from Guido. We can write in harmony, more than one note at a time. This recording, very apt, I think, is sung by the Tallis scholars. It has our wonderful friend Caroline Trevor, who deputizes here, singing the Introit, and the sopranos and altos of the Tallis scholars singing the chant, including Deborah Roberts, who very sadly died in September, and Tessa, our good friend Tessa Bonner, who died some time ago. So it's nice to hear this. You should notice a big difference. Once the Victoria starts, just get yourself into plain song land and then feel the effect of this music. In the texts of the Requiem, I've just referred to the light and the hope. There is also darkness and judgment. Some particularly two big movements, the Dies Irae, the sequence, and in the offertory, Domine Jesu Christe, which refers to being saved from the lion's mouth and from the depths of Tartarus, from hell. The Dies Irae is a sequence. That means a long chunk of text, usually in poetic form. There used to be a lot of them in the pre-Reformation rites. They were just cut down to 4 by the Council of Trent in 1563. And this was one of them, which they kept in because it's a great text. But it is pretty terrifying. And the next thing I want to think about is how we get to this. That's the fastest version of that I could find. That is Colin Davis, a rather badly recorded London Symphony chorus in the background, and the London Symphony Orchestra just about keeping up with him. A couple of moments of panic, but I picked it because it is so radically different. This is obviously Mozart from his great Requiem around 1791 that he's writing this. Written in very mysterious circumstances, allegedly. We now actually know a lot more about it. But you know the story you get in Amadeus, the dark stranger who comes on, commissions the Requiem, doesn't know who it's for. Mozart thinks he's writing his own Requiem and he's going to die, and indeed he does, doesn't complete it. We do now know that the person who commissioned this Requiem was actually a rather poor composer who made a habit of visiting other, better composers, asking them to write things and then passing them off as his own. So he's not quite the conspiracy that we need. But there are very big forces at play in music here which have a big effect on the church and how we write. The first is opera, which starts to come in the 17th century. Until that time, the church has been the principal vehicle for music composition, with instrumental music running behind it. As instruments develop, they start to take over, but the idea of opera, secular themes, secular stories set to music, start to become more important. And I'm going to say a bit more about that in a second. The other thing that changes is music as entertainment. Let's not get overexcited. J.S. Bach works for state officials. He's told what to write and when to write it. Slightly more complicated for him because he has the brain the size of a planet, and he does lots of things that he probably doesn't have to, but he is a paid musician. Okay, he's an employee, he does as he's told, and one of the things you have to do is to entertain. So you've just heard Mozart's version of Dies Irae, day of wrath, day of judgment, terrible day, panic, what are we going to do? If you go back 100 years and you go to France in about 1690, the Dies Irae sounds like this. So beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. There's no panic there, is there? The day of judgment is not upon you. It's very beautiful. I have to say, it could actually be it could be a setting of Miserere, have mercy on me, O God. Could be sung in an opera by somebody who's just lost a battle, maybe, and is sitting on his own and bemoaning his fate. There is nothing which connects you necessarily to the text of the Dies Irae there. What you do have is instruments, okay, the rise of instrumental music. And by the time you get to Mozart, you have the opera. Now, don't forget, Mozart has just written Don Giovanni. Okay, and in Don Giovanni is a very bad person, or is he? There's another lecture there. Is he actually, do we actually see Don Giovanni doing anything bad in Don Giovanni? No, we don't. All we hear is how he's failed at it. That's another story. But at the end, the Commendatore, who Don Giovanni has murdered, he has killed him in a duel, but then everyone kills people in duels in those periods. He's killed the Commendatore comes back, he invites himself to dinner, knocks on the door, and he calls Don Giovanni to repent, and Giovanni will not, and he gets dragged down to hell. Hell opens in front of him and he's pulled down. He is thus deprived of a Requiem Mass. He does not have the rights of the church. He's sufficiently bad, Don Giovanni, to go straight to hell without passing go and collecting £200. Mozart is therefore an opera composer. He wants you to experience the whole gamut of emotion, and the emotion is there. Opera allows you to express personal emotion rather than corporate emotion. So when we listen to the Victoria, for me, I get solemnity, I have great beauty. I feel as if I'm looking something sort of slightly up there where that little cutout is, something absolutely beautiful, and I'm looking at it and feeling inspired. In Don Giovanni, it's happening to you. We're back a little bit to Hushabye Mountain. It's that you feel the panic. You feel the panic going on. You can certainly feel it in that performance. And this is an important thing for composers now, that you express the individual emotion. You express the faith. So in Mozart's setting of the Dies Irae, you are in total panic at the start, and that's where you stop the first movement, in a state of panic. He's then going to take you on a musical and spiritual journey until the final section, which is the Lacrimosa. Very, very famous, we'll listen to in a minute. The Lacrimosa has teardrops coming down in the violins, you'll hear them, beautifully, just poised and hanging down. And then the choir starts singing. And the choir starts very sad, and it gets louder and louder and more insistent. It takes over from the instruments, it takes over from the tears, and it gets louder and louder into the final Amen, because the faith that we have means we know that if you are repentant, and if you have done the things that you have to do, and tried as hard as you can, we believe that there is hope and there is life after death. And that comes out in the music. So here is the Lacrimosa for the Bach Collegium in Japan, a very beautiful performance. And of course we move from minor into major. We have resolution. That is your hope. That is the deliverance of the hope, I think. I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to just move into my last section. I would just need to warn you, I'm going to play something that's going to shock you in a minute. You've heard it before, but it always shocks people when it starts. So I'll just warn you now. Government health warning has happened. I want to move towards two French composers for the final section. I mentioned at the beginning that the Requiem starts with light and hope. It moves into the judgment theme and the quite difficult stuff about going down to hell or not, we hope. But it then moves out at the end through the communion into the light again. And it's it is a journey. It's a journey that you get taken on. The ultimate opera version of the Requiem is by Verdi, and I'm just going to give you a quick reminder of his Dies Irae. That's the one you need to be ready for in a minute. Verdi is the opera composer par excellence. He wants you to be in a blind panic. You can almost see hell opening up in front of you. You can imagine you could be in a Franco Zeffirelli film production of dying and going to hell, and this is what it would feel like. They would not choose any other music. It's absolutely huge. This is not a Requiem for the liturgy. So the Mozart, you can do very successfully in the liturgy, and I think that's how Mozart conceived it. He didn't conceive it as a concert piece. Verdi wrote his Requiem absolutely through for the reasons of wanting to express his worry, anguish, pain as a result of coming face to face with death, but he's doing it on the opera stage, not on the stage of the altar. So just here it comes, just to set the bar before we go on to our two French guys. There you go. I mean, you can always, the whole chorus is in front of them, in front of you doing this, the whole thing, you know, it's amazing, amazing dramatic action. Now, for the composer Gabriel Fauré, who is writing, that was written in 1874, Verdi's Requiem. Fauré is writing, even better, writing about before 1890, sort of 1880, a bit later maybe, 1893, 97, so just a little while afterwards. Fauré is a song composer, I think of first and foremost as a song composer. He's also the organist of the Madeleine Church in Paris. He had also fought in the Franco-Prussian War. So he knows, it's not a very nice war, the Franco-Prussian War. It's short, but not very nice. He knows what that is like. And he wrote a Requiem which got quite a lot of complaints because allegedly there was a priest at the Madeleine, and the first time he heard Fauré's Requiem, he came up to him and said, "Oh, this is terrible. This music's absolutely awful." He said, when people come to church like this, they need to be frightened, they need to be on their knees and preparing for judgment. And you have written this music that, you know, it's just too beautiful. And in a sense, the priest is right. He's picked up on something very important. It isn't the normal state when you're dealing with the dies irae. It isn't that form of judgment. So I'm going to play you in a second the Liberame from the Fauré Requiem. It also has the dies irae part of it in there, so it refers to that. You can see Verdi's taken it to the ultimate operatically. He is presenting you with hell and judgment in front of your eyes. Fauré writes a song. He writes a song, it's in D minor, so it is a minor song, it's a sadder song, but effectively it's a song and it's a plea, I think. It's a plea for forgiveness. This is the incomparable Ben Luxon, great English bass, often forgotten these days, with the choir of St John's College, Cambridge. I'm going to remember to turn it up this time before I start. Just a completely different feel. Again, I think what Fauré is getting here is hope, is a confident hope. You still have to ask, you still have to seek forgiveness, but there is the hope in there that you're going to get it. So he has a little of that power. The trumpets, they do sound, or horns rather, do sound the day of judgment for you, but it's nowhere near as traumatic. It comes from a position of faith. The other thing Fauré does, and his companion Requiem writer Duruflé later in the 20th century, is they put an extra text in, which is not traditionally a part of the canon. They put in the In Paradisum deducante angeli. In paradise, the angels, may the angels lead you there. May the martyrs receive you at your arrival and lead you into the holy city of Jerusalem. May choirs of angels receive you, and with Lazarus, who was once a poor person, may you have eternal rest. This is text that is designed to be said or sung going from the church after Mass, going to the site of burial. So it is not part of the Mass. There's no reason to have this in the Mass. Fauré is the first person who puts it in. And I think he does it very, very deliberately because of this hope. He doesn't want people to be frightened in the way that Verdi makes them frightened. And it's a very important text, of course, because what it says, by mentioning Lazarus, and it's only a glancing blow that Lazarus gets, he just gets a quick mention, it's for everyone. The promise of eternal life is for everyone. It's not just for the rich, it's not just for the religious. Okay, it is open to everyone. Lazarus, in terms of the story we're telling, is a poor person who you might think doesn't deserve that, is not, not part of the tribe that will get it, is absolutely everyone. There is no bar of any sort. So these are the final words that Fauré sets. And it's also the final words that Duruflé sets. Maurice Duruflé was the organist of Saint-Étienne-du-Mont in Paris, and he was massively influenced by Fauré's Requiem, so he writes to the same harmonic scheme, and both basically in D minor, A minor. But Duruflé, to go back to where we came in on this talk, Duruflé is obsessed with Gregorian chant. So everything is based on the Gregorian chant melodies. So you heard in Victoria took the chant, and I didn't talk to you about this, but he turns it into very slow notes and puts it in one of the soprano parts. Duruflé quotes it entirely, and surrounds it with the most gorgeous harmonies. So he puts it in the most astonishing setting. It's like taking a very familiar character, a character you might recognize, and putting them in a painting with the most verdant, beautiful garden landscape with amazing flowers and colours. I'm going to finish off now by playing the In Paradisum from the Requiem, which we sang yesterday for All Souls Day. I'd like to, before that, play the plain chant In Paradisum, a very short piece, just so you get exactly the context. When you get to the Duruflé, listen out for the very, very final cadence. After the choir sung Requiem, the final syllable M, there's one more note to be played. There's one naughty note which Duruflé sounds on the harp, obviously, because all angels play harps. We know that, yeah? They're always playing harps. So this beautiful music is going on. Everything has stopped. The choir's got about as slow as it can get. Everything's finished. And there's one slightly dissonant note which Duruflé plucks from the harp. And it makes it even more beautiful. It doesn't offend us. It's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of extra passion. So here is the plain song, first of all, In Paradisum, and then I'll go into the Duruflé. There's very little you can say after that, to be honest. Did you hear the harp? Yeah, very beautiful. So he doesn't have to do that. That's a great thing when a composer does something that he or she doesn't have to do. A little extra bit. That's all I want to say to you this afternoon. I'd love to leave some time for any questions, which I can try to answer. Then I have to return, of course, to the choristers' rehearsal in order for evensong. So, but if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to. Yeah, well, I mean, Shakespeare, this interesting, somebody's asking about difficult characters getting beautiful music. I mean, the first thing that makes me think of is Shakespeare and Caliban. You know, the finest poetry in The Tempest is from Caliban. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about mine ear. You know, that unbelievably beautiful thing. I mean, there's redemption, of course, in beautiful music. So to be honest, I can't now recall the entire plot and whether they do get sing. But love transcends everything, as indeed the love of God does. So things, and again, I think about John Keats, transforming ugly things into beautiful things, is what I think we believe as Christians is an essential truth. Oh my gosh, it is another lecture in itself. Yeah, well, my first love was Brahms. I mean, I absolutely adore Brahms. So yeah, Brahms wrote what he called a German Requiem, and it was particularly in the light of the death of his mother. And he was he's very much a Lutheran composer, and he didn't want to write a Requiem Mass in that sense. So he picked his own set of verses in German from the Bible, some of which are traditionally to do with the funeral service, and some of which are not quite. So it's very much a personal view of it, and again, it's unremittingly positive. There is the letzte Posaune, very famously, the last trombone, he calls it in his Requiem, rather than the last trumpet, which does sound in the second movement. But essentially, it's a very positive piece. I mean, I'm looking at my friends over here. I can't quite remember how religious Brahms actually was in terms of the convinced nature of his faith. Or maybe other people know. I can't actually remember that. I tend to think this is a very personal statement of his. I don't think he's an avid churchgoer. I don't believe so. But it's therefore a very personal thing. And yeah, I absolutely love it. But I mean, there are all of these other, you could almost, without being rude, and when we talk about pseudo-gospels, you could always call them the pseudo-requiems, and the War Requiem sort of goes into that category as well for me, because it's trying to do more than one thing. It's not a liturgical thing, it's a larger thing. Howell's Requiem, similarly. I mean, I think that I'm going to be careful what I say here. The answer I wrote, everyone. I suspect if you are very, very poor in the 10th century, you're probably going to end up in a heap somewhere. But you know, maybe a kind priest would say a mass for you. because it's a crucial thing for people from that period, for the passing on of the soul, that this ritual happens. So that is why you have chantry chapels where rich people will pay, sometimes in perpetuity, for masses to be said for their soul. It's a crucial part of that carrying on for that mindset. So it should be everyone. Obviously, the bigger people tend to have bigger things. So the Victoria Requiem, which you heard, was probably sung at the Dowager Empress Maria's of Spain's funeral. Victoria was very close to her. As far as the Church of England goes, everything changed at the First World War, because the Book of Common Prayer is very much about burial, funeral and burial, and you need a coffin and you need a body. And in the First World War, we didn't have bodies. So people were in a terrible state. They were losing loved ones and basically getting something in the post saying that they've gone, that's it. And there was nothing, there was no ritual, there was no passing on that they could do. So the idea of requiem masses, or a service which takes place where there is no burial, where there are suitable words, starts to happen. It also happens because of Captain Scott of the Antarctic, the service of which we had here, no body, so we couldn't use common prayer. And in fact, they did a sort of version of the Vespers of the Dead from the Roman Catholic Rite for it, because everyone was stuck as to know what to do. So that happened very much in the First World War. And then afterwards, the liturgical changes meant we became much more Eucharist focused. So we do now have a Requiem Mass liturgy, which we can use, which is pretty similar to the Roman Catholic. In fact, it might be pretty much identical. I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to swear to it, but it's very close in terms of its shape. And I think now that we are much more comfortable, when I was a chorister, you sang Mass, you sang Communion on the first Sunday of the month in the morning and the third Sunday of the month in the evening, and that was it. And the rest of the time it was Matins and Evensong. But now that we're much more comfortable with it, again, it feels like the sort of everyday special, I think, for us as well. I remember very well being at Westminster Cathedral, and every year James O'Donnell would commission a new folk mass for the Chrism Mass on Maundy Thursday, so that everyone could join in, and we'd have rehearsals for the congregation. Nobody would sing it, and then we'd started putting down Mass 8, Plainsong Mass 8, and everyone joined in because they all knew it. So the answer is, in theory, everyone can sing Plainsong. And if you look back at the great evangelical days of the High Church, the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, there was an enormous emphasis on English Plainsong because everyone could sing it. When you're dealing with more composed and complex music, it belongs with a choir. So you end up with the congregation fulfilling two roles. They can either be actively engaged or they can be passively engaged. Both of them is equally valid. You know, jumping up and down and waving your hands around is one thing to do, but if you do that all the time, it simply becomes exhausting for both for yourself and everyone around you. There are other ways to sit and receive these things, I think. So yes, everything I've played, apart from the Plainsong, I would say needs trained singer to a certain extent. So, you know, amateurs can sing the Mozart Requiem, professionals can sing the Mozart Requiem, and the Victoria Requiem, actually, pretty much everything. The Drufle Requiem, no, you probably need a bit more skill for that. I'm looking at my colleagues over here. So yes, it is more on the elite stage. But for me personally, that reception of beauty, like when I go to an art gallery or I go to a concert myself, is, for me, being in the passive mode is absolutely essential.